connected to Operation Fox Hunt and the CCP's campaign of transnational repression, which is a terrifying threat to Chinese Americans, to other CCP targets, and to American sovereignty itself. So let me run some quotes by you. Quote, "If you're willing to go back to the mainland and spend 10 years in prison, your wife and children will be all right." Quote, "Post more, and I will chop your bastard hands off." Quote, "Two options, return to China promptly or commit suicide." These are actual quotes that CCP agents have said to people here on American soil, according to the Department of Justice and FBI investigations. And I know we have some people here today that weren't just threatened with words, but were actually attacked by CCP thugs 4 years ago. And they got the photos to prove it. To say nothing of physical violence, surveillance of children, and imprisonment of family members that some American citizens have faced. One Chinese American citizen was even detained against her will in China for 8 months while she was pregnant. I've spoken to dozens of dissidents from China and human rights activists. It's rare to find someone who hasn't experienced at least some low-level form of digital harassment from CCP agents. And I'm sure many of you here today have experienced that. So I thank you for your bravery in coming out today. How have we allowed this to happen on American soil? The answer, in my opinion, is that we have been blind while the CCP has been very cunning. Their threats are often hard to process because they're veiled. It's sort of like saying, nice family you got here. It would be a shame if something happened to them. It's a mafia-like threat because the CCP acts like the mafia. They buy off politicians, multinational organizations, companies, and in some cases, law enforcement. They use muscle and threats instead of persuasion. And like the mafia, they aren't afraid to make people disappear. But there's one important difference. Unlike the mafia, the CCP has a much more powerful arsenal at their disposal to back up their strong-arm intimidation tactics. Advanced technology, weaponry, artificial intelligence. They're using a terrifying version of Orwellian techno-totalitarian surveillance to inflict total totalitarian control on the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region, on Tibetans, and during the zero COVID lockdowns on citizens throughout China. Now, they want to export that repression around the world. And the only thing standing in their way is our will to defend our values. We must stand up, push back, and protect our citizens and the many reformers, freedom fighters, and asylum seekers, many of whom I see here today, who've taken refuge here in the United States. We cannot allow the threat that they have fled to follow them to our shores here in America. The FBI director recently testified that the FBI was opening up a new CCP investigation every 10 hours. Every 10 hours, a new CCP investigation. We in Congress, and I'm honored to have my two colleagues here, Dr. Neil Dunn, Congressman Richie Torres, in bipartisan fashion here today. We in Congress need to make sure that the FBI has the training and resources to deal with this threat. Not just at the FBI headquarters in DC, but at every local field office across the country. And it can't just be federal law enforcement. It needs to be local police trained on this as well. If a victim is brave enough to come forward, no repressive act orchestrated by a foreign government should ever fall on deaf ears. That's a basic promise we make to everyone in the United States, no matter what their background. Together, we will end this transnational repression. We will end this ugly affront to our sovereignty. And we will make sure that the United States is a haven from prosecution, not a hunting ground for authoritarians. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Now I'm honored to introduce a true freedom fighter, Joe Feng Suo, who was a leader in the student movement at Tiananmen, who's been speaking bravely about these issues for decades, before I was even born, who was at one point one of the 5 most wanted men in China, I believe, who's president of the Human Rights in China organization. Please join me in welcoming Joe Feng Suo. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Mike Gallagher. Thank you, Congressman Richie Torres. Thank you, Congressman Neil Dunn. We are honored to have you here. This is the first time that the Chinese dissident community feel that their grievance is heard by American public. You are representative of America. We are here because of you. Thank you. You just met my friend Yong Hong.
周副手的讲话。
大家好，大家好。
He was a political prisoner in China, arrested twice for 2 years, simply calling for disclosure of the assets of government officials. He was tortured, beaten, and he had to escape to United States for safety of him and himself and his family. 4 years ago, not too far from here, on the street of Manhattan, he was brutally beaten by Chinese thugs. And he had to be sent by ambulance for emergency medical treatment. And there are a few of them who are here today. What's more, the police did nothing. And they arrested one person, one perpetrator on the spot. He was released within the same day. There's nothing done after that. We want justice.
We want justice.
We want justice.
We want justice.
We cannot allow this to happen in American land. We cannot allow this to happen in this land of free and brave. We are here because we believe in freedom and we will fight for freedom. Today, there will be echoing rallies in Los Angeles and San Francisco. Why? Because everywhere we have been ignored, marginalized because of CCP's influence through trade and technology, and because they control so many communities here through the organizations like this, a secret police station in the name of hometown associations. Such organizations must be disbanded. They cannot allow to exist in this country. Guess what? This very association applied and was granted non-profit organization by United States government. That means taxpayer money is funding such organizations. How can this happen? This cannot happen again. We must stop this.
打倒共产党，打倒习近平，民主必胜，暴政必亡。
Everybody come down here.
Okay.
We
Thank
don't
you.
do nothing, we're here forever.
Thank you. Thank you.
If we do something, we all come out here, then we regret.
Thank you. 34 years ago, I was with millions on Tiananmen Square. It was there for the first time I believed that Chinese people love freedom and democracy, and they were willing to die for it, and the world witnessed their bravery through people like tankmen. There were hundreds of tanks. There were many tankmen. That's what we are hoping for. That's why we are here today. We want a free China. But I didn't imagine that 19 years later, on the streets of San Francisco, I was beaten by a Chinese flag-waving crowds full of hatred to support CCP's Olympic. I was looking at the devil in the eye. It was that moment I realized we have to fight for this country, because if China is not free, this country is not safe. We are not safe. That's why I cannot rest at any moment to fight against such a regime. Thank you all for coming today. Today is just a starting point. We need more activities like this. We need more victims to speak out. For anyone like Yonghu who speak out, there are tons of them who are so afraid, even though they are